Okay. So when you first open up Snapseed, this is what the screen will look like. So you can tap anywhere to open a photo. Okay. So just gonna tap and it gives you a few different options. You can open from device, you can use the camera and just take a picture, or you can open the latest image. For what we'll be doing, you're gonna open from device, and that's just going to bring up your photos. Okay. Um, so we'll go ahead, we'll go in, and then I can go ahead and pick a photo. So we're gonna start with this one. Okay. So here I have my photo opened up. Okay. This is a picture I took in my basement of kind of the fire escape tunnel thing in the window that I have. Um, So yeah, it was just really cool one morning with the shadows that were kind of coming in from the grate from above and all of that. So I took a picture. Okay. But overall, it's not a great picture. Okay. We've got kind of distracting things on the bottom, off to the side. Okay. It needs a little bit of work. Okay. So on the right hand side, you'll see a toolbar. And in the toolbar, what kind of automatically opens up are filters. So if you've ever used Instagram before, not sure if Snapchat or TikTok has them too, because I'm not on those, but you can add filters of to change the colors. We're not going to deal with that yet. We're just going to keep the picture as true to itself as possible and just make minor adjustments. So to get into those minor adjustments, we have this little pencil icon that's kind of in the middle of the right. Right. So when I click on that, it shows a whole menu of different tools that you can use. There's a lot of them. We're going to be looking at a few of them today. Later on, we will experiment with some other ones like the double exposure and the text. But for what we're doing, we're just going really basic. So the first thing you want to do is go into crop. Okay. So crop. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that I kind of got a little rectangle around it. It's in the second row all the way on the left. Okay. So crop is how I'm able to fix my composition. I'm able to cut off from my edges things that are distracting. Okay. So when I click on crop, it kind of gives me some options of some standard sizes, but we're just going to do this manually in free form. Okay. So along the edge, you'll be able to see, and you might not see it in the zoom, but you'll see that it has kind of a border around it. So just like when you put in pictures into a Word document, a PowerPoint, and an email, and you can kind of pull the corners, pull the sides to shimmy things around. So in this case, I'm going to tap on a corner and I'm able to adjust my cropping. Okay. So when I pull on a corner, it'll do, in this case, the bottom and the left-hand side. Okay. If I do the other corner, okay, I'll do the other side. If I just pull from the edge, it'll just move my cropping up or down, or left to right. Okay. So I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna crop this in such a way that I start to get rid of those distracting things. So the edge of the window on the left, on the bottom, I have a plaster slip mold that I made. So I'm going to crop that out along with that shadow reflection that's in the bottom. So pull that over because I really don't like that huge blob of shadow that's on the right. That's from one of those solar lights that I have. Okay. We'll just adjust. Okay. When I have it the way I like it, I'll just hit the check mark in the bottom right hand corner and it just automatically crops it. Okay. So any questions about cropping? Anyone? No? And you can write in the chat too if something doesn't make sense. I do have my chat open. Okay. So that's cropping. So really straightforward. That should really be the first thing or one of the first things you do to your image is crop. Okay. Another option you have is rotate. Okay, so rotate is right next to the crop option, and it does exactly what you would think it would do. It would rotate your image. So you have two options on the bottom. You can either flip. So what that does is it flips it horizontally. So whatever's on the left is now on the right and vice versa. And then you have rotate right, and that just turns your image. Okay, turns your image 90 degrees. Okay, so if you take your picture and it's upside down, okay, that's how you adjust it. If it's on its side and you need to make it going the correct direction, you'll just do that. Okay, when you're all done, you'll hit the check mark. From here, we're gonna go into Tune Image. So Tune Image is in the upper left-hand corner. It's the very, very first icon that you have. And this is where you will be doing the majority of your adjustments, the majority of your changes. So on the bottom, you'll see Adjust, and a menu pops up. You can adjust the brightness, contrast, saturation, ambience, highlights, shadows, and warmth. Okay. Right now, they're all set at 0. Okay. As you kind of go through these, you can either increase or decrease the adjustment. So for brightness, when I click on that, okay, it's going to change how bright or dark my image is. So when I just click on my picture and slide my finger to one side, okay, so I'm sliding it to the left, you can see up top, this little blue bar shows up. Okay. The further I move to the left, the darker my picture gets. If I go to the opposite end, it starts to brighten my image. Okay. So from here, it's gonna go darken it just a little bit, but not much. Okay. Next, I'm gonna look at contrast. So contrast is the separation of your dark and light values. Okay. So if I bump my contrast all the way up, you'll see that the shadows get really, really dark. And then the highlights, the areas that are bright, get really, really bright. Okay. If I go in the opposite end, it's going to make my image really flat and kind of gray looking. And the blacks are no longer that pure black. My whites are no longer white. Everything just looks really muddy. Okay. So with the contrast, you can adjust as needed to have kind of the desired look you want. And with all of the adjustments, there is no perfect formula. Every picture you take is going to be different. Okay? And each of you has kind of your own aesthetic, what you would like your art to look like. I do highly suggest that you keep your pictures more on the realistic end. So if I were to bump my contrast all the way up like this, yeah, it looks cool, but it also looks really fake. So you want to just make it so it's improved. Okay. Okay, questions? No, we're good. Give me a thumbs up if it makes sense. You're good? Okay, I see thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. And next, we're going to look at saturation. And saturation deals with the amount of color you have. Okay, so think of it as if you were adding food coloring to a glass of water. Okay, glass of water on its own is clear, but the more food coloring, the more dye you add, the more rich the color will get. So if you put a whole bottle of food coloring in a glass of water, it's going to be really solid color. Okay. The less you put, the less of that solid color you have. So with our photos, that's what our saturation does. So if I move to the right, you'll see my colors intensify. Okay, so that blue in the background turned a lot brighter, okay, as opposed to our original. If I go in the opposite direction, it's going to start to take away color. So my color photo will eventually turn into a black and white photo, okay, where it's just black, white, and gray. Okay, so at the lowest end, there's zero saturation. We got nothing in there. There's no color whatsoever. Okay. So this is kind of a cool thing to have if you want more of a vintage feel to your photographs. So if you ever look at really old photos that were from the early 1900s and they have a little bit of color in them, chances are those were colored on top of. So they're originally black and white, but then a little bit of color was added on top. So you can kind of have that feel. We'll just leave it about where it was. Ambience, it kind of takes the details and just tweaks them. Not entirely sure what it does specifically. Personally, I really don't like that one and what it's doing to my picture. So we'll just leave that at 0 and ignore it. Okay. Highlights. So highlights deals with those brighter areas of color and light. Okay. So the further I go to the right, the brighter my highlights get. The further I go the other way, the darker they get.
How does that compare to contrast?
That is an excellent question. So the contrast deals with both the highlights and the shadows simultaneously at the same time. Okay. With the highlights, you can just tweak those bright areas. And you can see the shadow lines aren't changing at all. It's just the lighter areas that are changing. Okay. And then we have shadows, which changes just the darker areas. Okay. So the light areas stay the same, the darker areas can get darker. So this is nice if you really want to make shadows or highlights kind of stand out more and have a little bit more of a punch. Okay, so it just gives you that freedom to change one or the other or change them just a little bit. Okay. And then last, we've got warmth. And warmth deals with the temperature of the color. So colors come in 3 different varieties. We have warm colors, cool colors, and neutral. Neutral colors are like our blacks, whites, and grays. Warm colors are red, orange, and yellow. So think of fire, think of the sun, they're hot. Then cool colors are our blues, violets, and greens. Think of water. A lot of times when you see pictures of ice and like cartoons, they're blue. So in the warmth one, you can kind of change your colors, your color temperature. So if I go to the right, it's going to make my colors a little bit warmer. It's going to add more of that yellow, orangey, red tone to it. Okay. If I go to the left, it's going to do more of the cool. So you can see that my picture is turning more and more blue. Okay. This you really won't have to do unless you have pictures that were taken inside and you kind of have this weird yellow haze over stuff. So depending on the lighting you have, you might notice that some of your lights at home might have more of a yellow color to them. Others might have more of a white or blue color to them. So this is where you could adjust that, because in the end, you really want this to, look a little bit more true to life, especially if you're taking a picture of a person, right? And if you're taking a picture of a person and you have that yellow light, their skin is going to look really yellow. Okay, so changing the warmth and moving it a little bit more into the cooler area will tone that down, and then the skin tone can become more true to life. Let's see, not sure if I have an example. Let's see. And open up a different one. Okay. So I'll pull up a different picture in a little bit, and I'll show you how that warmth looks. So yeah, so those are kind of the adjustments that you'll be doing for the most part. When you're happy with what you have, you'll just click the check mark and then it saves it. Okay. There is under Tune Image and Auto Adjust, but don't use it. Okay. It's just the iPad app assuming what you want it to do. But each of you has your own kind of ideas of what your final artwork should look like. So definitely just manually adjust. It doesn't take that long to do this. So just, do them all as you so see fit. Okay. Let's see. Let me open up. Okay. All right, so when you have a picture that is done and you're happy with how it looks, on the bottom right, we have the little export. Okay, so it's a box with a little arrow pointing up. You click on that, and then you have options. I suggest that you save a copy. Save a copy. Okay, so it's the middle one. Save a copy. Okay, because what this does is it not only saves a second version of your picture, but it lets you go back and make any changes you made. Okay, so to make changes, in the upper right hand corner, we have the little stack of papers with a back arrow. This is where you can make changes. So you can go back and undo all the things. Okay. You can redo. Okay. Or you can do revert, and that will just bring you back to your original picture. Okay. So that's to kind of undo. And you can also view your edits. I think once you revert, it gets rid of everything. But if you view your edits, you'll kind of see step by step what you changed and did. Okay. So I'm going to open up another picture. Here, we'll do this one. Okay, just so you can see how the warmth works with this. So warmer, cooler. So this was originally a white curtain, okay, but because of how the sun was hitting it, it looks a little more true to life on your side, but on mine I see a little tinge of yellow. But I can just kind of bump down the warmth more in the cool, and it turns more into that nice white color. Another thing you can do to kind of fix that is white balance. So that's in the upper right hand corner, first line. Okay. The white balance allows you to change the temperature. And then the tint. Okay, so if you see that your picture is really yellow, okay, you can bump down the tint a little bit. to give it more blue, and that blue kind of offsets the yellow. You can also, with this, choose a neutral color. Okay, so a white essentially, because you're doing white balance. So you find where your actual like purest white is in your picture, and then you can select that, and it kind of automatically fixes all your colors for you. So, questions, comments, concerns? This all makes sense? Yes, yes. All right. So with any editing app, and I'm going to tell you the same thing when we start working with Photoshop and Lightroom, a lot of this is just kind of experimentation. So I suggest, you open up a picture and just kind of click and see what stuff does. Curves, okay? Curves gives you some options on the bottom to kind of presets, almost like those filters. But then it also has this actual curve. And depending on, where this is, it does stuff to it. Okay. Ooh. So you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Okay. But yeah, just kind of experiment and play around. But the goal in the end is still to have your picture look as real or true as possible. Okay? I don't want to see anything crazy that looks like it's been neon, like lit and all sorts of weird stuff. Yeah, because then you start to lose the actual essence of the photos you took. Okay, so questions, comments, concerns, easy peasy.